Don't just stand there. Back row, now. My mother didn't even look up as she said it, her red nails tapping impatiently on the wine glass. This reunion's for people who actually did something with their lives. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from, and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Laughter followed. Sharp, cold, like ice against my skin. The banquet hall shimmered under chandeliers, filled with cousins in designer clothes, uncles who always judged too loudly, and aunts who wore fake smiles like pearls. Everyone had a title: doctor, VP, co-founder, stitched onto their name tags like trophies. I had none. Just Riley Evans, no title, no accomplishment, no seat at the long table where the real family sat. I clutched my tote bag tighter, filled with scribbled notebooks and worn-out resumes I still couldn't get responses for. I hadn't planned to come, but Grandpa insisted. Now I stood there, under 100 eyes, trying to find a chair that wouldn't make me feel like dirt. There's space near the bar. My mother smirked without facing me. Might suit you better. I blinked, bit down the lump in my throat, and nodded silently. Back row it was. As I walked toward the shadows, I passed Aunt Heather laughing with her husband about some vacation house they bought, just to store wine. My cousin Ava caught my eye and whispered something behind her hand. They giggled. Probably about my thrift store shoes. Hey, Riley, Uncle Todd said, grinning. How's that job search going? Still unemployed, or did Starbucks finally call back? The table erupted in low snickers. I didn't answer. My hands shook slightly as I pulled out the creaky chair at the far corner of the hall, away from the music, the buffet, the fake hugs. And that's when Grandpa appeared. He'd arrived late. No surprise. He always said, "The best ones walk in last." He walked with a slow, cane-tapping rhythm, his wrinkled suit ironed perfectly. But tonight, his steps were quicker, intentional. He didn't look at anyone, not even my mother, who started standing when she saw him but froze mid-motion when he raised one hand. Straight toward me, he came. Then, without a word, he leaned down and placed an envelope into my hand. Old, yellowed, sealed with a red wax stamp I didn't recognize. "Open it, Riley," he said, voice low, grave. "Now." The music didn't stop, but everything else did. All eyes turned toward the back of the hall. Even the bartender paused, holding a shaker mid-air. "What is this?" I whispered, heart thudding in my chest. My mother stood now, pale. "Dad, what are you doing?" But he didn't answer her. "Open it," he repeated. My fingers trembled as I broke the eye. Wax inside was a single handwritten letter. No date, no signature, just a few lines scrawled in familiar script. She's the only one I trust with the inheritance, not because of what she has, but because of who she is. C. Silence. Then, gasps. Uncle Todd knocked over his champagne. Ava's fork clattered to the floor. What inheritance?" my mother asked slowly, her tone suddenly trembling. Grandpa didn't look at her. He looked only at me. "The entire trust, the properties, the stocks, the accounts, the lake house, everything your grandmother and I built, it's Riley's now." My breath stopped. What? My mom's voice cracked. "That's a joke, right? She's done nothing. Nothing." "She's done more than you ever did," Grandpa said calmly. "She chose integrity over pretense. That's worth more than any title." I gave up my youth taking care of you," she shouted, stepping closer. "And this freeloader walks in here and gets everything?" She visited me when I was sick and told no one. She helped me settle affairs when the lawyers failed. She didn't post pictures, didn't brag, didn't expect anything. I stood frozen. I had done those things, but I'd never imagined. No. Mom's voice cracked into full hysteria. "She's a nobody. She doesn't deserve this." The envelope dropped from my hand as my fingers went numb. I felt hot, exposed, and then something sharper than the pain cut through me. Resolve. I stood, looked at the long table where they used to sit me with the coats, and I walked past it, past the buffet, past the stage, all the way to the front. I stopped beside Grandpa. "Are you sure?" I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes misted but proud. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And right then, one by one, they stood. Not my mother. Not the ones who laughed, but the ones who remembered. My father's old friend from the service, my elementary teacher, a distant cousin who once stayed with us after losing everything. They stood and clapped. Not loud, but real. I met my mother's eyes, and I didn't have to say a word, because finally, my silence said everything. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was enough. Enough to make my mother's smug expression crack like porcelain, enough to make Ava's whispering mouth freeze mid-word, enough to send a chill down the reunion hall. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, beside Grandpa, holding that brittle old letter like it was the last fragile piece of my dignity I had left. "You want to explain what this means, Dad?" my mother finally hissed, stepping toward Grandpa. "Because if this is a stunt—" He turned his cane slightly, blocking her path with more authority than strength. "No stunts tonight, Meredith. Just the truth. Something you've avoided for far too long." I could hear her breathing shift, that shallow, angry sound that always came right before she exploded. But she didn't, because Grandpa nodded at one of the assistants from the estate law firm, who walked in carrying a thick leather folder. He handed it to me, and I opened it. Inside, certificates, ownership deeds, transfer documents, a trust account statement that didn't look real. Millions. My hands shook. "She's not even the oldest," Uncle Todd muttered from his seat. "This is ridiculous. The order should go by age." "It's not a will," Grandpa cut in. "It's a decision. Mine." "You made this without telling the rest of us?" Aunt Heather's voice was coated in sugar and fury. "Behind closed doors?" Grandpa didn't flinch. "You're the ones who made everything about appearances, vacations, family photos for social media. You even turned this reunion into a red carpet event. But the one person who never asked for anything, who showed up when no one else did, was her." I said nothing. I wanted to. But my voice felt like it had been hiding for too long. Mom's heels clicked against the polished floor as she paced in tight, angry circles. "This is insane. She's been unemployed for years. She doesn't own property, doesn't even have a partner. What kind of legacy is that?" "She has something none of you do," Grandpa said, gently turning to me. "Compassion. And that's worth everything." Those words punched the air out of me, not because they were dramatic, but because no one had ever stood up for me like that, especially not in front of them. "You still haven't told them, have you?" Grandpa turned, eyes on me now. "What you did for your cousin?" I swallowed hard. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was to me." "What are you talking about?" Heather said, clearly irritated. Grandpa faced her. "Your son, Lucas. He was on the verge of being expelled. The principal called me after hours because you wouldn't pick up. Guess who drove across town, pleaded with the school board, and even offered to tutor him so he wouldn't fail." Heather stared blankly. "Riley," Grandpa finished. I lowered my gaze. "She didn't want credit, didn't want thanks, just wanted him to have a shot." A stunned silence gripped the room. I could hear forks against plates, nervous throat clears, distant music from the DJ trying to stay relevant. "That was you?" Heather asked, face unreadable. I nodded once. Mom scoffed. "So what? One nice deed and she gets to inherit a lifetime of wealth?" "No," Grandpa said sharply. "A lifetime of character is why she's the only one who deserves it." He turned again to the rest of the family. "Let me remind you what all this is," he said, gesturing at the chandeliers, the catered meals, the wine, the manicured lawns outside. "This isn't a reward for status. It's a legacy, built on my sweat and your grandmother's sacrifices. And I will not leave it in the hands of those who only care about money." I could feel the shift now. The pride on their faces replaced with unease, the unity between them slowly unraveling, like someone had pulled the thread they'd all been clinging to. Ava stood suddenly. "Is this why you told me to stop sending you investment pitches?" Grandpa gave her a dry look. "You mean the crypto Ponzi scheme?" "Yes." She sat down. "And you." He looked at Uncle Todd. "Offered to renovate my house. I checked your account. You would have taken a home equity loan under my name." Todd looked down at his plate, his jaw clenched. Mom finally exploded. "I don't care what she did or didn't do. She is not capable of managing this. She's emotional. She has no experience, no stability. She's just a soft, fragile little girl who still thinks she's in high school." My jaw tightened. That was always her way of controlling the room, cutting people down to feel taller. But this time, I didn't shrink. This time, I stepped forward, and I looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not fragile," I said quietly. "I just stopped letting people like you break me." Her eyes widened. "You don't get to decide my worth anymore, Mom." She blinked. I turned to Grandpa, holding the folder in both hands. "Why now?" I asked. "Why me?" He smiled, not softly, but like someone who'd waited years to say it. "Because I see the way you carry pain without making it everyone else's problem. I see how you love people who never loved you back. And I've seen what silence looks like when it's holding everything together." I couldn't speak. He leaned closer and whispered, "And because the rest of them, they only show up when there's a spotlight. You showed up when there was none." My knees nearly buckled, but I stood tall, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. The air inside the reunion hall had changed, thick with tension, heavy with everything unsaid for years. You could almost hear it, regret slipping between the clinks of untouched glasses. I stood at the front, still holding that leather folder, my fingers pressed against documents that had the power to rewrite my life, and theirs. "She's not even married," someone muttered from the crowd. I didn't flinch, because for the first time, I realized they weren't angry because I was unqualified. They were angry because I was never supposed to rise. I was supposed to stay invisible, the back row daughter, the girl who took the bus while others parked their leased BMWs out front, the one who served punch at these reunions while they toasted to one another's curated lives. But now I was holding the very thing they'd spent years clawing toward, and I hadn't lifted a single finger to steal it. That's what made them furious. "Let me see that," Mom snapped, lunging toward the folder. Grandpa stepped forward instantly, blocking her path with his cane. "Try me, Meredith," he warned. Her mouth fell open, but she stopped. "You always played favorites," she hissed. "Always liked her more than me. Admit it." "I don't play favorites," he said coldly. "I just remember." And that shut her up, because they all remembered, though they never spoke of it. The night I walked home barefoot in the rain after they left me at a restaurant because I talked too slow. The time they laughed when I said I wanted to be a writer, saying, "You need a personality before you can have a voice." The birthday where no one showed up, except Grandpa, with a cupcake and a card that said, "I see you, kiddo." Those memories, they didn't forget. They just buried them under shiny resumes, fake smiles, and matching Christmas pajamas. "You raised a fragile woman, Dad," Mom snapped, trying to regain control of the room. "She's not strong enough for this." Grandpa's eyes locked on hers. "You're wrong," he turned to me. "Tell them about the job offer." I hesitated, then nodded. "I got an offer from Monroe and Grant," I said softly. Uncle Todd's head jerked up. "The law firm? Yeah? You're a lawyer now?" Ava asked, a sneer in her voice. "No," I said, letting that small smile play across my lips. "I'm the writer who ghost-wrote the campaign that got their CEO reelected as state judge. They offered me a permanent position on the team." The silence was thunderous. "You've been working?" Mom said flatly, stunned. "Freelancing, writing, editing, odd jobs." I paused. "I never told you because, well, you never asked." Heather shifted in her seat, the weight of their assumptions beginning to crush them. "You think I sat around waiting to be chosen?" I continued, my voice firmer now. "I've been working while you laughed, learning while you looked down, surviving while you pretended I didn't exist." "You're making this dramatic," Ava muttered. "No," I said. "You made it cruel." And finally, their faces showed what I had waited years to see. Doubt, shame, recognition. They were so used to seeing me quiet that they forgot silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is survival. "I never asked for money," I said, turning to everyone now. "I never asked to be at the center of anything. But this moment, I won't apologize for it. Not anymore." Mom crossed her arms. "Well, you still can't handle the pressure. You don't know the first thing about managing a legacy." And then, a voice cut through the tension from behind us. "She won't do it alone." Everyone turned. A man stepped forward from the doorway. Tall, late 30s, with a calm, commanding presence. Blue button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows, eyes trained on me. Not with judgment, but something else. Respect, recognition. Ethan, I gasped. He nodded slightly. Ethan Monroe, the CEO's son, the one I had met months ago. During a freelance consultation, we'd worked side by side for 3 weeks. He never treated me like I was small, just quiet. He said I reminded him of people who did the most damage, in the best way. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I came for Grandpa," he said, then looked around. "But stayed for you," the crowd murmured. "Is this your boyfriend now?" Mom sneered. He chuckled. "Not yet, but I've been hoping." My cheeks burned. "I told your grandfather I'd personally help manage the transition of assets, provide legal counsel, and help Riley navigate every part of this." "She's not alone," Uncle Todd barked a laugh. "This is nepotism," Ethan raised a brow. This is intelligence recognizing intelligence." The tension shattered, and I stepped forward, letter in one hand, folder in the other, and faced them all. "Every year," I said. "I came to these reunions thinking maybe, just maybe, someone would treat me like I belonged. And every year," I added, "you reminded me that I didn't." But now they saw what they didn't want to see, that the useless girl wasn't just holding the future. She was the future. "I won't take revenge," I said finally, "because people like me don't need to." I let the silence settle, and then added, "The truth is always louder than your cruelty." They weren't blinking anymore, just staring, as if the girl they thought they knew had been swapped out with someone else entirely. But I hadn't changed. They just never bothered to see me fully. I stood tall, the folder clutched in one hand, the envelope with Grandpa's handwriting in the other. And behind me, Grandpa was still silent. But his presence, like always, was louder than the whole room combined. Ethan moved beside me, not as a crutch, but like a pillar, unshaken, ready. I turned slowly and looked at my mom. Her lipstick was perfect, but her face had cracked. "You could have told me," she snapped, voice sharp. "You could have said something, given me a chance to prepare." "For what?" I asked. "To convince Grandpa to change his mind? To smear my name again like you always did? Lazy, dramatic, needy Riley?" "No, Mom, I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what you'd do." She stepped forward. "You're still my daughter." "No," I cut in. "I was only your daughter when I stayed small, when I didn't ask for more, when I accepted your backhanded compliments and hand-me-down dreams. But the second I found worth in myself that you didn't give me, I became a threat." Heather cleared her throat nervously. "Look, maybe we all just misunderstood each other. It's a family reunion. Maybe we can talk this through privately." Grandpa finally spoke. "Now you want privacy?" He turned slowly, using his cane to balance, voice firm but aged. "You all had years to speak truth in private, but you used those years to spread silence, to push her to the edge of every room she entered, to sit her near the bathroom door like she didn't belong. Dad," my mom tried. "No," he said louder. "You mocked her, you belittled her, and you raised your kids to do the same. And still, she came back every year, sat quietly, smiled politely, and helped clean up your messes." The room was quiet, no clinking, no whispers, just breathing, harsh, uneasy. He turned to me. "Riley," he said, "I'm giving you full executor authority. You don't just inherit wealth, you inherit control." My breath hitched. "Are you sure?" "I should have done it sooner," he said. "But I thought maybe they'd change. They didn't. You did." Mom shook her head. "This is insane. She doesn't know how to run estates, manage taxes, oversee holdings." Ethan interjected calmly. "She's already done more than you know. She consulted on 3 campaigns, ghost-wrote 2 legal manuals, and edited over 50 technical briefs that saved companies millions." Everyone stared. "She chose to stay quiet," he added. "Doesn't mean she wasn't working." Mom laughed bitterly. "Oh, so now she's a savior. Wow. Just what this family needs? A failed little Cinderella story." I felt the fire rise in my throat, but instead of rage, it was resolve. I stepped closer to her. "No, Mom," I said softly. "This isn't a Cinderella story, because Cinderella needed magic." I pointed to my chest. I used grit. Her expression collapsed. The arrogance drained from her like water from a cracked vase. She turned to Grandpa. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," he said. "I'm giving it back its spine." Behind us, chairs started moving. People standing, not walking out, but walking toward. A few of the quiet cousins, people I barely knew, distant relatives. One by one, they came and stood near me, as if suddenly remembering what it meant to have integrity. Even the catering manager stepped forward. "Miss Evans," she said gently, "when your mother pushed me earlier for being late on the wine, you were the only one who asked if I needed help." She smiled faintly. "That says more than any title here." I almost choked on the lump rising in my throat. This moment. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about value, true value, human worth, the kind they tried to strip from me piece by piece every year. Now I was reclaiming it. "Grandpa," I whispered, "I don't want to punish them." He smiled. "That's why you deserve it. But I also won't reward them for cruelty." He nodded. "Then do what's fair, not what's comfortable." So I took a deep breath and turned back to the crowd. I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm not erasing names from documents. But things will change. I held up the envelope again. This legacy won't be run on gossip and status. If you want a seat at the table, you'll have to earn it. With humility, with service, with actual human decency. "Is this some kind of charity parade now?" Ava asked, arms crossed. "No," I replied. "This is real life. And real life doesn't hand you respect because of your last name. It makes you build it." Some of them looked away. Some of them nodded. And some, like Mom, stood frozen in their disbelief. I didn't rise to be petty, I finished. I rose to be free. And with that, I handed the envelope back to Grandpa for safekeeping, turned to the stunned audience, and walked out of the spotlight, finally owning the silence that once used to drown me. And for the first time in my life, I heard something new behind me. Applause. Not forced, not polite, earned.